to the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka. You can find me elsewhere online as Asawatelling, and links for this video can be found in the down bar here if you click below on YouTube. So hello, how are you doing and how are you enjoying July? In this fortnight's podcast, I'll be chatting about everything I've been up to making in knitting and in sewing, and in the last section, conversational threads, I'll be having a little chat about plastic-free July because that is the month that we find ourselves in. So without further ado, let's just get into it and have a chat about what's in my knitting basket, because I've been very, very busy, as you'll probably know if you're a regular viewer, working on the release of my latest sock pattern. So for those of you who are new to the channel, I am hosting a 6-month-long sock knit-along called the Crimson Sock-along, in which I invite everybody to get knitting one of my sock designs that I've got available. I think I'm now up to 5 different sock designs. And this is the 3rd one that I've released during the sock along, so I'm hoping to release 1 every month. But I'll be completely honest with you, I might have to release 5 patterns over the 6 months instead of all 6. We'll see how things go. But yes, anyway, the ice pop socks, that's what they're called. So the inspiration that I've taken for this sock collection is 1990s confectionery and ice lollies, and it's been an endeavour that I've been designing and knitting along with the support of my viewers, of my audience via Ko-fi, and I'll be chatting about that in a moment. But let's just talk about the design that I've got. So I'll first pop some pictures up on screen. So as usual, as you can see, I've got the shorter trainer socks, but I do also have a sample of the longer ankle socks. And my idea for this design was basically to knit socks in a lace pattern which had as many holes in as possible, because it is July. It happens to be a very, very grey and extremely windy July that we are experiencing here in London. But in the summer, you know, my thought was that if you're going to wear wool socks, you want to have as much ventilation and aeration going on as possible, hence the sock design. And it's a really straightforward lace design, which actually only has 2 rows in it. It's a 2-row pattern repeat, so it's super easy to grasp. And obviously the feature of this sock is this little cable twist detail that I have up in the cuff, which just cinches it in. And so that's only 6 rows long, and it's just this brief moment where you kind of have to concentrate, but I've tried to describe it in as full and clear a way as possible, so I hope that you guys would enjoy doing that, because literally it's just this little fiddly moment that you get out of the way at the beginning and then you just keep knitting. And if I hold it up to the camera a little bit, you can get a sense with how much you can see through when they're on the sock blockers, that there is indeed a lot of holes going on in there. And the other exciting detail about the socks that I've featured is to do with the heel, because I've got this gorgeous broken rib effect texture on the heel flap, which is something new to me, as well as a garter stitch edging. So it's really, really highly textured, and then the toe on this sock is just plain, so that you can just have a little moment where you can relax. So a little bit of, you know, a few moments of concentration for those extra details that I think are so worth it, and then plain sailing really down the foot. So I hope that you guys like the design. My thoughts behind the name, Ice Pop, is, well, it's sort of reflecting on these long columns of ribbing, perforated ribbing, you know, with eyelets in it, and then that little twist at the cuff, which is sort of like the twist at the end of the packet. But yes, as I said, I'm inspired by ice creams and confectionery and sugary treats that I reminisce about from my childhood. Back then, when it was okay if your teeth would fall out because you'd get an extra set with only a few more years to wait. Yes, so ice pop socks. So I sort of had this idea of like that long tube of ice that would eventually melt and then be full of many holes indeed. Hence the many holes on this. And before I forget, it is my birthday next week, and also there is a discount code up for this sock pattern if you download it on Ravelry, valid for the rest of the week, and the discount code is JulyBaby for 20% off, and there'll be links below in the down bar here on YouTube. So do feel free to use that, because I am a July baby. Yes. So yeah, that's my design. So here's the other socks here. So I've been working really hard on them, and I like the very eerie, otherworldly effect that's going on here with this dark brownish black, blackish brown, and the lime green fluorescent colour. And the brown kind of reminded me of like a cola pop, and then the green reminded me of a lime pop. So that's just a little bit of fun there. And there's just a couple of things that I want to touch upon now, which is, the first one is Ravelry, because all of my knitting designs are available for download on Ravelry. And this is something that I did mention at the end of last fortnight's video podcast episode, link on screen now if you haven't seen it. I mentioned this at the end. Now, obviously, when I make video podcasts, I don't really, they're not done live. I do them a few days in advance. It takes a while to edit them and upload them and format them and so on. And when I commented on the new Ravelry in last fortnight's episode, I think it was quite soon after the Ravelry changes, essentially, that I'd recorded it, timing wise. And I think since then, 2 weeks later, the much fuller and broader implications of the Ravelry redesign have actually come to my full attention. It took me a little while to clock on. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, Ravelry redesigned their site, they launched it, and it ended up causing quite a lot of health issues for people, including those who suffer from migraines. It was very triggering in that sense, and various other conditions as well. And if you follow me on Instagram, I did write a post about this last week, where I talked about disability, and basically the Ravelry site is disabling its users, so it's not a great effect at all. And it took me quite a while to realise the wider implications this would actually have for everybody. Obviously, I was always very, very sorry for the effects that it had, the health effects that it had on people, which is absolutely awful and definitely not what anyone should be experiencing. But as I said, it took me a while to really understand the wider implications across the board for anybody that uses or relies on Ravelry as a source of income. So what's that to say is that since then I've been doing some research into alternate selling platforms, because I think the fact that the Ravelry site is so problematic, coupled with the very slow and at times misleading responses from the website management, have definitely shown me that it's really important not to be relying on them solely for income, essentially. I think what the website, how it was affecting individual users was bad enough as it was, but then coupled by the sort of lack of real acknowledgement of harm done or communication of a real plan of action that may or may not have been implemented. It's sort of like multiple levels in which things are really going wrong. Like I said, it's going to implicate me, because I can't in good conscience be recommending that people utilise the Ravelry site in order to connect with my Ravelry group and my patterns and so on, if there's that kind of real risk. Plus the fact that lots of people, I've heard of quite a lot of people just unable to use it at all, or just don't want to engage with it anymore due to the stance that they are taking. They're being really, really ableist, basically. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of research over the last couple of weeks, and I now have a bit of a plan of action in place in terms of how to move forward with pattern sales. So at the time of recording, my patterns are only available on Ravelry still, but rest assured I am looking into other options. I have a plan, and I just need to work through that plan. I just have to put it in place, hopefully in a timely manner, hopefully within the next week. That is the plan. That's on schedule. So yes, Ice Pop socks are available on Ravelry. Now, the Crimson sock along has always also occurred on Instagram. So if since May, when the sock along started, if since May you did actually cast on any of my sock patterns, please do use the hashtag Crimson Sock Along to join in on that fun. Lots of people have been finishing my patterns recently and tagging me and sharing them to me, which is just unbelievably thrilling. And I've particularly enjoyed the yarn and colour choices that people have made, how they've styled them in their outfits, how their colour has fitted in between their personal style and their home. It's been really lovely to see everyone put their individual stamp on the patterns. So yes, whilst I know that several people are using, you know, like my other hashtags, like hashtag the Crimson Stitchery and the individual hashtags I create for each pattern, some people haven't used the Crimson Sock Along hashtag as well, so please do use that. So I haven't still announced the prizes, and that's because I'm making them, and to be honest with you, I've had so much on my plate. Like I said, I have had a to-do list that has been massive, and not so much time recently to work on Crimson Enterprises because I was working so hard throughout lockdown on the chapter redraft for my thesis, because I'm also a PhD student, and you know, that got handed in, and I really had been basically working full time on it, and yet working at a tortoise pace, like half my normal speed. So it had been very, very consuming and extremely exhausting, quite frankly. But you know, now that I spent all of that time on the thesis draft, I'm waiting for my feedback, and I'm just going to put aside a few weeks to work on Crimson Enterprises, because I am actually a part-time PhD student. But it's, in practicality, you don't spend 2.5 days a week on the PhD. You know, you have some weeks where that's all you do, and then some weeks where I just absolutely have to rest and put my attention elsewhere. So yes, still haven't been ready to announce all of the sock along prizes yet, but I think that given the problems that we're having with Ravelry, I don't know, should I just move the sock along like prize entry just to Instagram, because I know that not everybody likes to use it. Ravelry's been a bit of a hub. It's been a bit of a community hub recently. Well, not recently. It's been a bit of a community hub for the Crimson Stitchery. And whilst I also, you know, engage with the YouTube comments, I write a newsletter, which, by the way, please do subscribe. I love my newsletter, and I get great feedback from it from readers as well. So I think you guys love it too, those who subscribed. Yeah, so anyway, I engage with everybody in the YouTube comments. I post updates in the YouTube community tab from time to time, and there's Instagram. But the reason that I liked Ravelry, even though it was quite old-fashioned, like many things with Ravelry, it was a bit old-fashioned, but I liked it because I felt like the group was a space for you. And I feel like with other things, it's always like me leading, whereas I felt like in the group, you know, the people that participated in the discussions really, you know, took it in their stride and made it their own, and really led that side of things, which was so great. And I felt a bit at a loss of what to do without, you know, moving away from Ravelry as the model, because Instagram, I've spoken so many times about how I find Instagram really problematic as a company and as an app that is designed to be addictive. I think that's really bad, but it is a great, you know, it can be a very, very useful tool and an important, you know, marketing tool as well. It's a way to reach people because people enjoy using it, and there are lots of positives about it. Don't get me wrong, but you know, at the same time, I ebb and flow with Instagram. There's times where I use it a lot, there's times where I don't, and as a result, I don't have a very big profile on it. You know, I think my audience on Instagram is like half or even a quarter of what it is on YouTube, if I look at the actual engagement that I have. So yeah, it's sort of kind of up to me to build that up. But in terms of a platform where you guys, you know, the audience can have a bit more of a say, that feels a little bit more of a level playing field rather than it just being top down, I'm not quite sure. Eventually, you know, in the future, maybe a couple of years down the line, depending on how things work out, I would actually really like to have a Patreon space or something like that as I grow my practice and build it. Because I understand that that has got a bit more of a community feel, but obviously there's a paywall, so my intention was always to, you know, try and make the Crimson Stitchery a bit more self-supporting, so that I could create content for free, educational content, for those who don't have the means to access it. But anyway, just lots of thoughts there really going on. And as always, if you have any thoughts, feedback or suggestion, I would be very, very interested to hear it. Please do drop me a comment down below here on YouTube to let me know what you think about all of this business and ongoing structure with the Crimson Stitchery and so on. But while I'm on the subject of audience, you guys, a big massive thank you to everybody who in recent months has bought my patterns, but also who has bought me a coffee over on Ko-fi.com, which, if you're not aware, I have an account over on Ko-fi.com, and there's a link below, and it is a donation platform where you can buy me a coffee, metaphorically or literally sometimes, as it collects donations through PayPal, and that money allows me to dedicate time to running the Crimson Stitchery. It covers a lot of the costs, because doing anything online, there are associated costs, and allows me to make equipment purchases and just, dedicate some time towards working on the channel and producing the best content that I'm able to for you guys, both in terms of this kind of entertainment podcast content and more specifically helpful videos, tips videos, tutorials. I've got my knitting masterclass series, and lately I've been working on a sock series too. So that's been really great. And so yes, while we're on the subject of that, I wanted to talk about some yarn. Now, we are in the middle of Stashless 2020 year, and I'm going to be doing an update about that. I was maybe going to do... Oh, there's an ambulance. I live a couple of miles from a hospital and there's an ambulance route there. What was I saying? Yes, we're in the middle of the Stashless 2020 year, and I'm planning on doing an update, possibly next podcast episode in Conversational Threads maybe. But this project was, this yarn situation was sort of a separate issue. So, not making excuses, I'm just explaining. So what I have on my lap here is my sock knitting box for my current sock design project, of which I've just done design number 3 here. And what this is a box of yarn that you guys have bought me, because through the coffee donations I was able to raise sufficient funds to actually purchase yarn for the sock samples, of which several, let's have a look, several were hand dyed yarns. I've got three to hand here, from different London-based, I think they're all London-based indie yarn designers, so artisan yarn designers. And this is, this was through the Ko-fi that I was able to really go out and look for the materials and the best tools that I needed in order to design and create the samples for this collection. And like I said, you guys have allowed me to do that. And then alongside the indie dyed yarns, which honestly they are normally completely out of my budget, I am a student. Leave it, let's just leave it at that. They're completely out of my budget, but I wouldn't expect them to lower their prices, because obviously they need to have adequate reimbursement for their labour, but it's just completely beyond me. So thank you so much for that, because it's really allowed me to choose the best things that I needed to realise the little buds of ideas that I have. And actually, I'm not sure how well it's showing up. I mean, it's quite dark, as I said, it's very overcast. But this yarn is actually this gorgeous, brownish black, and it's actually yarn with stellina in it, which is, I didn't realise what it was, but it's a metalized nylon thread, basically. So it is nylon, so it's synthetic, it's plastic. And I always, I'd heard quite a lot of other knitting podcasters chat about stellina sock yarns, and I just wanted to try it out. And so when I saw this sock yarn for sale, I thought it'd be so good for the sock project, because although it's so dark, it's got this glittery effect and it really does catch the light. And it is synthetic plastic, and that is something that I'm going to be, again bringing into the last section, Conversational Threads, and talking about there. But I just wanted to try it out, and I thought it's such a dark colour, but sometimes you do actually just need a dark pair of socks. Sometimes hot neon salmon is not quite right, and you actually need a dark pair of socks for your outfit. So I thought that was really, really fun and just made it a little bit jazzy. So yes, this is from you. And also, as I said, 90s confectionery was the theme. And so I had all of these super 90s colours. Green, pink, all of these neons. Now, a viewer suggested that I use a dark colour. That was the other reason that I chose this, because a viewer, I'm sorry, I can't remember your username, but a viewer reminded me that in the 90s you had lots of different colours, especially on like roller skates and things like that, that were then brought together with like a very dark black kind of zigzag or some kind of framing. I think rollerblades is the best thing I can think of if you think of like the pad, and then you had like the black Velcro strips that would go around your elbows. And then I had this blue colour. So as well as the more expensive indie dyed sock yarns, I have also used quite a lot of this brand, which is Coop Knits Sock Yeah, because it's really affordable and it's mass produced, it's machine washable, and it comes in a great range of colours, especially their blues and greens are really good. I really wish they would improve their reds and pinks. I think, well, I love this neon pink by them, but the rest of their reds and pinks don't quite do it for me. Now, because I was ordering all of this stuff online because of lockdown, I did actually order everything from different local yarn shops in London, so they're able to support small businesses too via you. But because I was ordering some stuff online, obviously, despite my best efforts, and I'm sure the shop's best efforts too, some of the yarns just didn't look the same, you know, they just didn't look the colour that I thought they were going to be when they arrived. So I have actually ended up with quite a few yarns that have got tones that are a bit too similar. Don't know if you can see, like I've got a soft tangerine that I thought was going to be like a dark burnt orange. I thought it was going to be like a Seville orange or the outside of a blood orange, and it's turned out to be like a soft tangerine. I've got this coral, I've got this neon pink, and then I've got this that I thought was going to be like a pure sunflower yellow, and this is like another shade of, this is like a clementine. So I've got these soft oranges that I thought were going to be really like strong striking oranges, like the orange in this silk headscarf that I'm wearing. So that was a bit annoying, because they're nice colours, but obviously they don't work all together in one collection, you know, for the purposes that I had in mind. They're all just too similar. But because I've got these two skeins of this clementine orange, I thought it'd be really nice to offer this as one of the prizes for the sock along, because out of one skein you will be able to get a pair of little trainer socks out of just one skein. So I thought that could be prizes for two different people. And it is actually a really nice colour. I think it's a very flattering, soft colour. I genuinely think it would be great on a range of different skin tones. Obviously I'm very, very olivey, so there's not a massively high contrast there, but I think it could be really cute, especially against blue. God, can you see what I'm doing? But I think actually if you were much darker than me, I think it would look even more beautiful, and if you were much paler than me, I think it would stand out a little bit more. But as it is, it's like, I don't know. It's okay. But anyway, it is nice, but it's just, I've got too many soft oranges and soft pinks going on, and I thought I was going to have like darker, more jewel tones essentially. So I don't know what happens there. But anyway, yes, so I've got two prizes here, but the other prizes that I have to make are forthcoming. And I'm really excited about them, but I just need to get some time, that's all. The next knitting project that I want to chat about is this ongoing project that I have shown you in the last few episodes, and that is my yellow cabled cardigan. So last time I showed you that I'd done the back and two fronts, converted the shoulders into a 3 needle bind off with short row shaping instead of a stepped bind off and seaming. And I had done the neckband, and now I've done a sleeve. Hooray! And I've even started the other sleeve. So that's great. Now I've been so up and down about this project, because one moment I'm like, yeah, I love the project, yeah, love it, blah, de, blah, de, blah. And then the next moment I'm just like, oh, this project. So anyway, I'm probably a third of the way through the second sleeve, at least in terms of the height. So that's good. It's on its way out at last. And I was having a lot of issues with this because I've basically had to combine 3 different dye lots. And so the back is a slightly darker shade of the front. But then the third yarn came for the sleeve and I alternated it, but it's a lot darker. So basically like the original yarn I had was very, very acid. It was very light coloured, but it was actually more green than yellow. And then the second was a true yellow, but it was in the same tone. No, is that what I mean? Yeah, it was different hues, but it was in the same tone value. But then the third yarn that I got is just totally different, and it's got more brown in it. You know, it's a darker yellow, but it's a more brownish, orangish yellow. So that's been super annoying. So I knit my favourite is the first yarn, the acid yellow. It's like limoncello, it's greenish, it's chartreuse. I think chartreuse is an alcohol as well. So I striped it here, alternated it through the sleeve, and you can really tell. I mean, I can really tell. I mean, you can see on camera just the fact that it's slightly darker than that. You know, that is what it looks like. The sleeve is going to be darker than the body. And I think, you know, I know that I'm being very anal about this, and I know that other people genuinely wouldn't notice, but I do, and I'm just trying to accept it. Yeah, I'm just trying to accept it. Because this is just what it is now. So it's going to be lovely, it's going to be nice, but the sleeve, half of the sleeve, or 2/3 rather, 2/3 of the sleeve is different from the body. That is what, like, you can see, I can see on camera, they're two different colours. So anyway, I'm thinking, you know, once it's on and I'm doing things with my arms and not walking around staring at the sleeve and the fact that it's obviously striped, you know, once I'm doing things, hopefully it won't be such an issue. So anyway, I've got to do the second sleeve and then seam it all up. I think it's going to be really nice if I do that. I think it's going to be very sweet, especially with little summer dresses like this 1950s dress that I sewed a few years ago. Yeah, so it's like I'm wearing a bib, honestly. There we go. That's that. So on to sewing, and I've been sewing masks. I mentioned that in the last episode, and I don't have all of them to show you because obviously the masks have to go in rotation when you wear them because you're only meant to wear them once. And lockdown is easing, or is lifted, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, in London. I'm way too paranoid to go anywhere. I don't want to go to the pub. I don't want to go to, I mean, I want to go to bars and restaurants and cafes and galleries and stuff, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to. I don't think it's worth the risk. I think it's silly, and it quite frankly contravenes, you know, everything that all scientific experts have told us, and the fact that other countries are experiencing second waves is inevitable. So anyway, sewn a bunch of masks, but I'm only going to use them if I've had to get public transport a couple of times for, I would consider them essential purposes, you know, visiting family. And my partner was actually called into work, which is strange. So I had to make a few more for him because he's decided to split half of a journey on public transport and half of it on bikes. So he's taking his bike on the train essentially. So he needed some more masks. So now this is the second or third batch I've sewn. Some have been given away, some are being worn, some are in the wash. So I've just got 4 to talk about. And they're all made using the same pattern, which is Durata Davis free mask pattern. And quite frankly, I follow a sewing blogger or Instagrammer, Peter Lapin, who I always want to call Peter Lapin, which means bunny in French. Peter Lapin, but I think it's Lapin because he's from New York, he's not French. And basically, you know, he said that this was a good mask, so I just followed him. And one of the reasons he liked this pattern was, you know, it's free, it doesn't have a curved seam, it just has 2 darts, a chin and a nose dart. And then I followed his tip where basically, when you sew the lining, when you're lining it up with the outer, you push the lining so it's slightly proud. So then the lining ends up being a little bit smaller than the outer, and then when you turn it inside out, that will just pull the lining in slightly so that the seam is inside on the lining side, not on the edge poking out. And yeah, what else should I say? So Peter Lapin, Peter Bunny, Peter Rabbit! Sorry Peter, I'm sure he's not watching this. He wrote the blog or writes the blog Male Pattern Boldness, which is fab. It's such a good blog, and he has great projects. And I didn't even realise for years that was a pun. Male pattern boldness, bold patterns. He likes bold patterns. Was a pun for male pattern baldness. I had no idea until I was on the train, obviously months ago, and I looked up and there was an advert for like hair implant solutions. I was like, what? And I've been following him and reading his blog for a decade probably, and I had no idea. I mean, why would I? I don't have it. There's a lot of hair in all of my family. We're very lucky. So yeah, here are some masks. So here I've got kind of golden with a stripe. Don't know how well you can see that. Golden with a stripe. And this is from the second bunch, so it's got a sunflowery kind of inside. I've got very, very jazzy pattern for my partner when he's in a jazzy mood. And then these ties are like leftover bias binding, left over from a job, bias binding that I don't like because it was really cheap stuff, that really stiff, it's probably synthetic polyester bias binding. When you're doing a job, sometimes you get to go to wholesalers, and a costume job that is, you get to go to wholesalers, and it's just cheaper to buy like a whole reel of it than it is to buy just 2 or 3 meters, especially when you're charging it to the job. So then you just end up with so much stuff left over. Wholesalers are very dangerous places. And then one for me with a blue polka dot. I actually used the wrong side of this fabric by mistake because I wasn't paying attention. And the yellow, blue polka dot. Don't know if it's showing up. We're experimenting for the Crimson Stitchery with different lenses and different editing and stuff, you may have noticed over the last few videos. It's starting to work out, but I still haven't quite got it in there, but we learn, we live and learn. And this is from the first bunch where I followed Peter's suggestion. I think it was he had used an old t-shirt which he said was like stretchy and a bit softer on the head, but then I ran out of old t-shirts, so the other one's a bias binding, and then that's got this salmon pink interior. It's got little flowers on, and they're all made from this massive quilting cotton stash that is inherited from a relative clearing out their cupboards that I've mentioned many times on the podcast before. And the thing that's unique about this pattern is that it's 3 layers. So there's the outer, the lining, and then there's an inner lining, which is jersey. And I think that the idea is that with the 2 woven fabrics and then with the knit fabric, if you think that the thread is wiggly, I think the idea is that all of the threads come together and provide an effective filter, but frankly they're horrible to wear. They're so hot, they steam up my glasses and I can't breathe wearing them. So I'm very happy, more than happy to wear them on public transport if I have to get it, whilst avoiding people as much as possible, but honestly I'm hoping not to wear them very much at all. But yeah, they are those. And if you're wondering what's going on here, what it is that this goes through your head. You put that through your head, and then you use these ones to tie it. So if I've got a bun, then I'll tie it in a knot in a bow above the bun, but I've just got some hair clips as well. I clip them in place. Instead of like using your ears to secure the mask, it's tied in 2 places, it's fastened on your head. So that's those conversational threads. So now let's get to the last segment of the show. And yeah, just want to note that just now the doorbell also went and the postman dropped off another thing, another piece of equipment that I have managed to purchase this month thanks to my Ko-fi supporters, and that is a photography light. So yeah, when I film, I'm sitting by this like patio sliding door thingy, so it gets natural light, and normally the lighting's okay, but it's quite dim, and we had to do quite a lot of editing on the computer afterwards just to make it look decent, honestly. But something that I've been really struggling with is the lighting when I do any kind of tutorial. It's just been very, very difficult to manage with both natural light and also the shadows cast by overhead lights in the flat. So I'm really, really excited about this purchase. I've literally just taken it out of the box and plugged it in. So I'm gonna have to learn about the best exact place to position it and so on. But yeah, I thought I'd just mention that, since there's been a slight change of atmosphere, perhaps. But yeah, so thank you very much to everybody for your coffee support. Obviously, haven't been able to leave the house to go and get a coffee and a piece of cake, as so many of you suggested that I do over the last few months. So I spent it on something super, super practical and definitely necessary instead. But as I said at the start of the episode, I'd like to chat about Plastic Free July. Now, at the beginning of the year, I actually had grand plans for Plastic Free July for the channel, and following different viewer requests, I do have a series planned about sort of my approach to zero waste and crafting and sustainability and so on and so forth. But I can only do so much. It's just me working on the channel, although I do have a tech guy, my partner. But yeah, you can't do everything. And I am doing the sock series at the moment this summer, which seemed to make sense because it, helps me answer individuals' questions in a way that manages to benefit more people in the community. Whilst also being relevant for the sock along that I'm doing and all the sock designing that I'm doing. So specific videos about, trying to reduce plastic and zero waste, more generally in lifestyle, but also as it pertains specifically to craft, knitting and sewing, will be coming at some point in the future. But I just thought I'd chat about Plastic Free July more generally. Now, obviously, this is a campaign. I would assume that it would normally, be timed for July in light of summer activities and lots of beach pollution that plagues us each year. And so on and so forth, which is slightly different this year. Although, oh my goodness, did any other British people see those photographs of Bournemouth and Poole a couple of weeks ago? Absolutely, just horrific, just on the next level. If you don't know what I mean, Bournemouth and Poole have got really famous beaches because they have beautiful golden sand, and they're the area in the UK that gets like the most sunshine every year, so obviously they're really huge for tourism. It's on the south coast, and just a couple of weeks ago when it was really hot, they just got swarmed by people vacationing, let's just say, trying to let off some steam from lockdown, and the debris that was left behind is just on another level. And you would verge on animalistic, but to be honest with you, I feel like a stray dog wouldn't behave as badly as like some of the people, litter bugs, that did. Anyway, Plastic Free July. So it sort of feels a bit strange to be talking about plastic free right now because obviously society is opening up in different places differently, and people may or may not be going out and doing their normal things, but I am aware that using reusable coffee cups and things like that and bags is not allowed currently for safety reasons, which really doesn't make sense to me because the virus can survive on stainless steel and plastic for, I think it was 72 hours. So even if you've got a disposable plastic cup, it could still be contaminated, whereas the one you've brought from home would be free. But anyway, so I feel like, obviously you shouldn't not take your medication and everything like that, and, things are sterilised and so on and so forth. That's very, very important. But when it comes to reducing plastic, I think that it's important to look at maybe areas of life where actually plastic isn't essential. So obviously in your medication you need to have plastic packagings and whatever, because that's how they come. But I do think that, after spending a lot of time at home, it's been a really good opportunity to think about and reevaluate the amount of plastic that we're using in our life. Now, the reason that I want to talk about Plastic Free July on this channel is because I think it's very, very easy to get to a place where we bury our head in the sand. Not the sand on Bournemouth Beach. Yuck! Not the sand there, but we bury our head in the sand. We know that climate change is a massive deal, and it's happening right now, and its effects are being seen all around the world. We know that plastic pollution is an issue, and pollution in general. We know that we need to be reducing our emissions, fossil fuel emissions, and yet often it can feel very difficult to do anything and feel like the battle is too big and what's the point? And I think it's a very, very dangerous place to get to, that sort of fear and apathy. because it makes you feel powerless, and it sort of almost feels like the challenge is so big that it's insurmountable. But you've got to remember that the reason that the challenge is so big, you know, of trying to take action to reduce climate change, and follow like all of these international treaties that, you know, diplomats keep negotiating, it feels like every other year, and then it's like the boundaries, you know, get pushed further and further and further, because nothing ever, you know, they're never actually successful. They just say they're going to do all of this stuff, and then they say, okay, well, we'll try a bit harder, but maybe aim a bit less high next time. Anyway, you've got to remember that the reason that it's so difficult to get any action is because we are fighting, you know, against like millions of pounds and dollars, more specifically, in marketing that's being spent by petrochemical companies, because it is oil that, you know, is the raw material for making plastic. And so it is an uphill struggle, and it's not anyone's fault, but, you know, let's face it, climate change is happening on purpose. And I think that what becomes quite irritating is when you see or read or see on the news, you read of kind of companies denying their own responsibility, you know, saying, oh, we couldn't possibly change our packaging or change our supply chain or delivery method because the consumer wouldn't want it, and blaming it all on the consumers. And I think that there is a certain amount of work that needs to be done with attitude shifting, which is what I think, you know, what I'm hoping to contribute through this video and what other people's blogs and so on that I read. You know, there is a certain consumer attitude that can change, but honestly, like, I just feel like 50 years ago, if someone said to me, oh no, don't bother drinking from a metal cup, drink from this cup and then immediately throw it in the bin, I feel like I would have been quite shocked. And yet we've been lured into a place where that is the norm, and going against the norm is always very, very difficult, because let's face it, it's not so much that people dislike change or are hard to, you know, find it difficult to adapt to change, but it's the very, very real fact that the larger structures in society, the people that really have the power, because money is power, and, you know, people that control our energy and our, you know, transport system, and frankly, you know, the government, are against it, you know, because profit and economic growth has been put first before health, the health of, you know, health and well-being, the health and well-being of people, animals, and the environment altogether. And it kind of goes back to what I was chatting about last episode when I was talking about the botanist and poet Robin Wall Kimmerer and her work about Native American approaches to ecology, where you understand that there's a responsibility as a human to take care of the environment, not just to take from it, but to, you know, have this reciprocity and mutual respect and mutual benefit and gain that we need to tap into, really. So this is why I think this place of, you know, eco fatigue or green fatigue, helplessness and apathy is a really dangerous place, because basically it's giving in, and and it means that, you know, the people that are essentially master manipulators have won. So yes, sure, you could argue that, you know, one person's household not buying a roll of cling film is like a drop in the ocean, but I feel like if people really came together and made the stand very, very publicly, not just in sort of micro outlets like my YouTube channel, but, you know, like the BBC did, I think it was a 4-part series last year with Hugh Fernley-Whittingstall, which was extremely shocking. But if you publicly declare that actually, as a consumer, I don't want to be breathing in plastic microfiber, plastic particles in my home. I don't want to be breathing them in outside. I don't want to be drinking water that has plastic, you know, particles. If you're declaring that, then there's absolutely no way that companies can hide behind the excuse that the consumer isn't ready for change or anything like that, because it's so detrimental on so many ways. Anyway, deep breath. So that's the real thing, you know, feel inspired, and don't feel inspired. Know that we can't change everything overnight, and frankly we won't, but it's that opening of the door, and I think it has an accumulative effect that once you start doing some things, you can do more and more and more. at the same time, if you allow your apathy, your fear to control you, that is sending you down a slippery slope on the opposite direction, I think. So when it comes to plastic free, a couple of years ago, I think it was probably when I first started podcasting, there was a big trend in knitting podcasters talking about plastic free. And a lot of the outlets for this was talking about superwash sock yarn and superwash yarn in general. And I just wanted to mention that briefly, because I knit with superwash sock yarn almost exclusively, despite my sort of eco-warrior credentials. And the reason for that is I don't think that all plastic is bad. As I said when I was talking about medical supplies, not all plastic is bad. I think what we need to look at is plastic pollution and reducing unnecessary single-use plastic. But some plastic is very, very necessary. And I know for a fact that if I had a pair of socks, well, I have knit socks out of non-superwash yarn, and even though I hand washed them, they felted immediately. I think I washed it twice, I wore it 3 times, and they were like a pair of felt slippers. So then that's completely useless, because that pair of socks is then a wasted skein of yarn. The socks couldn't take the heat, moisture and abrasion from my foot. I have quite a heavy step. They couldn't handle it. So in that sense, then having to, whatever I did with the socks, well, I actually think they're hiding. They're in the naughty corner, but obviously I could recycle it because they were wool, I guess. I could send them to a textile recycler. I could recycle at home and make like a cushion pad, but essentially it's something that is gone, which is wasted energy, and it's a wasted product if you're just going to have things that just don't serve their purpose and felt up. So I think, plastic in certain uses is fine and good, but there's other areas, like if I ever buy stitch markers or equipment, I try to buy things that don't come in those like little tiny plastic cellophane packets, and like stitch markers I would buy metal ones, not plastic ones, because the plastic ones can just break and fall apart. The same for things like paper clips and all those little things. So I think once you start working on reducing plastic, it can be quite an anxious time. You see it everywhere because it is everywhere. You feel like it's this tide that you're swimming under, because we are swimming under a tide of plastic. Like, I'm pretty sure the human race will be extinct, and then there'll still be plastic sitting around for hundreds if not thousands of years. That is the reality. So I think we need to look at where we can make changes and make those changes, and as time goes by, if we stay committed and invested in this, then we can do more and more and more along the way. So Plastic Free July, I wonder, can you look around your place, wherever you're sitting now, and is there something that you could substitute? Instead of wrapping a bowl of leftover food in cling film, could you just put a plate on top and stop buying cling film? Instead of buying a roll of sandwich bags, could you buy a stainless steel sandwich box container that's reusable? Do you know what I mean? Things like that. So I think Plastic Free July is a good time to have raised awareness. If you haven't already, to do a plastic audit, which could be quite formal, literally putting all of the plastic from the week in a pile, or just what I did during lockdown, just noticing where plastic is accumulating, and again, single-use plastic, things that are avoidable. Can you make an alternate decision, in your consumption habits, in your practices, and what you keep around you? Just a last thing on the note of superwash yarns and synthetic fibres, including clothing fibres. For many years, I have been very, very discerning when it comes to fibres, especially with sewing. I'll buy pure natural fibres if possible. So cotton, wool, linen. I think those are the main ones. I've knitted with bamboo yarns. That was a bit weird. Oh, silk, obviously, silk. But there are some instances where, again, synthetic fabrics are the right fabric of choice. One example is sportswear. Try jogging for 40 minutes in a cotton t-shirt. Like, it feels absolutely horrible, and it is horrible. So you can get laundry bags which are made from a very, very fine mesh which trap plastic microparticles and stop them from filtering out into the water supply. So I would say, particularly for people who are concerned about superwash sock yarn and putting superwash sock yarn in the washing machine, I would suggest that you purchase one of those bags and put your socks in those before you machine wash them, or wash them at all, actually, even hand wash them. Just as a quick side note, in case anyone is wondering why I keep talking about superwash yarn, it's because superwash is a chemical processing treatment where the scales on the edges of the wool fibre are removed. And the scales on the wool fibre are what causes the fabric to full and to felt up, because they lock together with heat, heat, moisture and abrasion, i.e. when you wash it. And the superwash yarn basically burns them off, and a lot of the time the superwash process coats them in a plastic resin, basically. So that's why. So it's basically wool that's been covered in plastic, or a plastic form. But to be honest with you, like paint, wall paint, varnish, your household textiles, or the stuffing inside your cushions, like most things are made from plastic. And I feel like superwash sock yarn, I mean, if that's your one contribution, that the thing that you feel like you can change, then more power to you, and I do respect that. But I think at the same time it's important not to get too hung up on exactly just one thing, especially when nylon is on average only 25% of a sock, so it's not tons, but maybe look at other areas in which it is possible to instigate larger changes. And I think I've mentioned this in light of these socks and the stellina fibre. So I think that this yarn is absolutely beautiful. It's Ching fibre glitter sock. And I think the yarn is really beautiful. I love the dyeing. And they're obviously not the only company that does stellina sock yarn. There are lots. It's a wholesale, yarn base. That I've seen sold online. But to be honest with you, I won't be buying stellina sock yarn again, and I will be hand washing this in my plastic mesh, anti-plastic pollution mesh bag, because unlike a lurex fabric that you might get on like a lurex leggings or t-shirt or socks, this stellina nylon thread is not well integrated at all into the spin of the yarn. Frankly, it just sticks out everywhere, and I can see immediately that little bits of nylon are going to break off and just be trod, even just all around the house, let alone the whole getting into the water system business. So that was an interesting experiment. I really like the socks and I will enjoy wearing them, but I would choose superwash sock yarn, but honestly I would avoid stellina like the plague. I would avoid it because I can see them sticking out. It's like if you ever were a kid and you played with a little plastic toy, like a McDonald's toy, and sometimes they were really bad quality and like little bits would break off the toy. It's basically like that. Anyway, so keeping it positive. Do let me know what your thoughts are on my approach to Plastic Free July and Plastic Free in the future. As I said, I will be doing a video series about this in the near future, but at the moment I'm focusing on socks. And yeah, that's it from me. I'll see you for another podcast at the end of July. Next week is my birthday, so I'm going to be doing some kind of plant vlog. If it's a nice day, I'm going to do a vlog of my garden, because I did a garden vlog last July. There's a link on screen now. And if it's a horrid day, like it is today, to be honest, I'll just do a houseplant vlog. So I'll be back for another podcast at the end of the month, but I'll see you next week for that. And just as a last reminder about my ice pop socks, do take 20% off at Ravelry checkout with the code down below. And again, I really do have to apologise for viewers who have been disabled by the Ravelry site or who are now choosing not to use it for other reasons. I realise that it is a bit unfair that I have released the socks only on Ravelry despite knowing about the issues, but honestly, I'm going to get to it. I promise I will get to it this week. And yeah, like I said, I can only apologise. I hope you'll forgive me. But please know that I mean you no ill. Anyway, everybody, I hope that you are well. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, do give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop me a comment down below. You can subscribe to my newsletter, Postcards from the Crimson Stitchery, for a monthly update in your inbox. And a last massive thank you to all of my coffee supporters. And if you're interested in getting involved in that, there's a link down below. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.